Welcome back to the Fascinating Guide to the World Cup, where you get to learn irrelevant facts and I get to remember what I looked like at 35. So, Group E has France. France is the flaky girlfriend of the event. Last time they ended up in a boycott. The time before that they had Le Headbutt in the final. The time before that they were winless, and the time before that they won. That's the problem with drama queens. They are a mess if they are not the best. Here's Group E. Group E opens up with a match between Switzerland and Ecuador. For the Swiss, kid names. Switzerland doesn't pick your child's name for you. I don't know who's spreading that rumor. They do, however, ban you from using a name that's unclear on gender or associated with the opposite gender. Funny names, city names, and brand names are out, as is the American trend of using surnames. In fact, if anyone finds a name offensive or a potential challenge for the child, it's forbidden. So, Penn Jillette's daughter, Moxie Crime Fighter, no. Gwyneth, maybe 1 for 2. And David Beckham and Jamie Oliver combined to go 0 for 8. For Ecuador, it's an Eskimo gold rush. The 1920s saw a boom in home refrigeration in the United States, which also meant a big boom for ice cream. Ice cream bars also took off. The Eskimo pie was introduced in 1921, and by 1922, Americans were eating 1 million bars a day. What does this have to do with Ecuador? This drove demand for cocoa so high that cocoa prices increased 50% and brought Ecuador, a global leader in cocoa production, out of a deep nationwide depression. Kids, chocolate, sorting it out, it's Anne.
You had me at chocolate ice cream. Ecuador takes it, 3-0.
Book it, update it, and let's move on to France, Honduras. For France, it's Francois Rabelais. The father of satire, humanist, Renaissance writer, tipsy monk. Rabelais is best known for Rabelaisian humor, which meant the use and maybe overuse of body parts to make a point. His grander goal may have been to promote humor as a means to solve life's problems, but this is the guy who dedicated a whole chapter to finding the perfect tool for wiping one's butt. 54 items were tested. The winner? A well-plumed goose. And for Honduras, we have the football war. In the 1960s, Honduras passed and enacted land reform acts that took farms out of the hands of peasants and squatters from El Salvador and gave them to native Hondurans. In July of 1969, the two countries played 3 World Cup qualifiers against each other within 19 days. They were tense, and just before the second match, El Salvador actually invaded Honduras and kicked off 5 days of direct combat. On July 26th, El Salvador won the rubber match and promptly dissolved all diplomatic ties to Honduras. Here to sort out the France from the football, it's Alex.
It's all fun and games until someone gets invaded. Honduras, 2-1.
Next, it's a European dance between Switzerland and France, and Switzerland brings out Kindlefresser. Translation, child eater fountain. In Bern, there's a mysterious fountain that shows an ogre eating a child with a sack of fresh, uneaten kids at his side. It was built in 1546, and guesses include the Greek god Cronus, who ate his children, the founder of Bern, whose crazy brother ate his children, a warning to children to avoid nearby bear pits, an anti-war statue. Listen, what's more disturbing, the statue itself or the fact that we have plenty of explanations available? France comes back with a new classic, the Dirty Tour. The winner of the Tour de France has tested positive for doping 40 of the past 53 years. If Lance Armstrong's 2005 title was given to the best rider to never fail a drug test, they would have given it to the guy in 23rd place. From 1998 to 2006, the best finish by a non-doper was 4th. Cheating goes all the way back to the start. In the Tour's first years, organizers had an honest-to-goodness problem with some riders taking trains and buses instead of biking the stages. And for our verdict, we turn to Eric.
The Swiss win 2-0. Feed the cheaters to the ogre.
I like it. Now we move to Honduras, Ecuador, and Honduras brings us Festival de Lluvia de Peces. The same time each year, this, thing happens in the Lloro region of Honduras, and once it happens, all the townspeople drop everything and have a festival. That thing? If you know your Spanish, you have already figured it out. It rains fish. Local legend attaches it to a 19th century priest whose prayers for food were answered with this rain. Now, there are meteorological explanations, but best not to rain on someone's parade, unless with fish. Ecuador responds with, the more presidents, the merrier. Ecuador's constitution imploded in 1997. Their Congress voted out President Abdallah the Madman Bucaram. He wouldn't resign, though. The Congress elected Fabian Alarcón president, but Vice President Rosalia Arteaga had equal constitutional claim to the office, as did the president of the Supreme Court, who thankfully wasn't interested. No one could make up their mind. Bucaram was ousted on February 6th, Alarcón sworn in on the 7th, Arteaga on the 9th, and Alarcón again on the 11th.
Fish from on high. Crazy constitution. Ryan.
The fish are dominating. Honduras 3-0.
For Honduras' last shot here, we're going to be making distillery. Honduras got named because of Christopher Columbus. Story goes, as he was sailing away, he said, "Gracias a Dios que hemos salido de esas Honduras." Translated, thank God we have come out of these depths, and so it became Honduras. The port he was sailing out of, named Gracias a Dios. Thank God. Not thank God we got to be here, thank God we found a way to leave. Switzerland's last chance, Swiss national redoubt. Surrounded by Axis countries in World War II, Switzerland decided that victory wouldn't come from stoutly defending their borders and cities. National Redoubt was a plan where Swiss troops would give all that up and flee to the Alps, to a massive fortress infrastructure that made crossing the country by foot, road, or rail impossible. For the Cold War, they added 3,000 demolition points that would collapse roadways and access points, and built enough nuclear fallout shelters to house the entire population. They're ready! We've got depths, we've got heights, we've got Christian.
It's hard to stay so neutral when you have a real-life Helm's Deep. 1-0 Swiss.
Thank you. Finally, it's Ecuador, France to close out Group E. Ecuador brings us Mount Chimborazo. Mount Everest is the tallest mountain on Earth at 29,029 feet. Mount Chimborazo in Ecuador is the highest point on Earth. It's only 20,564 feet tall, not even in the top 100 of mountains, but the Earth isn't a perfect sphere. It's 927 miles wider than it is tall because rotation squishes it a little. Therefore, a tall enough mountain near the equator earns the distinction of being farthest away from the center of the Earth. France, closing it out with the 1869 Lafitte. There is still no cure for phylloxera. They're microscopic insects that feast on grapevine roots and leaves. American vineyards are resistant, but European vineyards, especially French ones, were devastated by them in the 1870s. As a result, when pre-1870 wines go on the market, collectors take notice. In 2010, 3 bottles of the 1869 vintage from Chateau Lafite Rocheux went on auction. They were bought for a record total of just under $700,000.
It's a matchup of record holders. Emma, what do you think?
The Lafitte was neat, but Ecuador wins 2-1.
So despite it being tight at the top, it's Europe who stays home. Honduras and Ecuador advance. Come back for Group F, we'll have the hottest, we'll have the farthest, and we'll have the couple that fell in love all over again in a bad way. See you then.